Hey Diva, welcome back to my channel. And I know that's right, with Natasha Night. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Natasha Night. Think of me as your favorite unapologetic diva who's here to help you fill your cup of confidence and inspire you to embrace your most authentic selves, bask in self-love, and harness that divine feminine energy, honey. So if you haven't already joined the Diva family of confident, unapologetic people who live out loud, please make sure that you do so by subscribing and hitting that notification bell so you get a notification every single time I upload a video. Trust me, you won't want to miss it. All right, now let's get started with the video. So now where we're at is me moving, my ex moving in with me. So you have to think about the fact that he is going to school online and doing his master's. He's not working. He refused to work. When I told him, like, hey, things are going to be costing more and this place is a lot more than what I was expecting and blah, 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 blah. Oh, just get another job. Just get a mini job. So I'm working two jobs. This motherfucker is at my house, not cleaning my house. He's cooking, but he's not cleaning my house. He's not doing anything. He's not working. Every time I'm telling him to get a job, because he had finished like earlier, he's arguing with me. And then he takes the girl's money to go on a trip to Thailand. And this is like September-ish, literally a couple days before my grandmother passes away in 2019. And then I go over to from Berlin to Miami for like 2 days. I think I literally wasn't there for more than 48 hours. Go really quickly because I just started another job. Um, so that way I don't have to work two jobs to cover the bills since I'm not getting any help from the hobosexual that moved in. And so yeah. And so But once he moves in, that's when like the rules started. So at first he was like, "Oh, you can't do this, you can't do that." And I'm one of those people, you can't give me rules and expect me to follow them. Like you don't jump in and I ask you how high. So what he did was, "Oh, I have really bad OCD and really bad anxiety and like if you don't do this, it like literally stresses me out and it blah blah blah." So that was his way of like manipulating me, right? So it was to the point that, mind you, this man is moving into my house. He's not paying for anything. He is literally, the only thing he's doing is cooking. And that's because he realized I'm not going to fucking cook. So he's cooking, but he's not doing anything. He's not helping financially. None of that stuff. So when he gets his degree and he's, oh, I want to be a software developer. I want to be a software developer, blah, blah, blah. That's why I got this conversion degree. And so then it turned out I realized that he didn't actually speak German how he said. Like his German was really bad. So I fixed up his resume for him. I did like practice interviews for him because I wanted him to go to interviews to get a job. I'm like, you are a white man. Like there's no reason for you to be in Germany if my Afro Latina ass is not struggling in any way, shape, or form. And granted, I speak German fluently. I'm very like I'm very articulate in every language that I speak. So, but regardless, like I was not having any trouble getting a job. There's no reason that he should have an issue getting a job. So, anyways, so that's like the point. So then um he's refusing to work. He's making rules in my house like, oh, you can only wear this outfit if you're sitting in the living room. You can't wear this if you're in the kitchen, in the bathroom. Like it was like the weirdest thing. And I really don't know how. And I realized afterward that it was like he was testing to see how much he could control. And it was even to the point he would try to control how I would have fun if I would go out with my friends. Like he never really cared about what I wore or any of that because he didn't care about me. Like if he saw a stain or anything, he wouldn't tell me. And then when I find out and I'm like, "What's your deal?" and he's like, "Oh, like I don't know why you care." And so, but then if I would tell him like, "Hey, you have a thing," he's like, "Why didn't you tell me earlier?" So yeah, he was very like when I look at it, he was very emotionally manipulative. And every time I would try to leave him, he was like, "Oh, I'll change. I'm so sorry. Like, I don't mean it like that. You know, I love you. You know, you're my world." So I would just get sucked into this like vortex of negative energy essentially. And so, anyways, he was such an energy vampire. Every time I had like wins with work, like you have feedback talks at work and they give you feedback on like what are the things that you can improve and all this stuff. And this is like before your probationary period is over and then you have a permanent contract and even after. And he just was never happy for me no matter what. Um and so anyways, I learned that his German skills were actually really bad when I was doing practice interviews with him. So I got really nervous about him being given a chance to do these software stuff because he wasn't really good. He didn't really know a lot even though it's what he wanted to do. And so the funny thing is he lied to me and he told me like, oh, his ex, like she got a lot of money out of him that like for the 5 years she stole like 50K and then she bounced. But the crazy thing about that is that's what he ends up getting out of me. Um, no, he gets like 70K from me in the like 4 years. It's wild. But he swindled me out of my money, and he would use that money to go and leave, like to Spain and all these places, or to go back to Scotland, where this girl that he was messing around with, and take them out on dates with my money, which is wild because he's one of those cheap mofos. And so, anyways, but he's telling me how she cheated on him and he kept on with her and she took all this money. But in the end I realized when that was the situation that I ended up dealing with, which is like constantly cheating and everything. That's when I realized like holy fuck, this guy was lying to me the entire time. And so yeah, that's basically what happened. And then eventually he got more and more emotionally manipulative. He refused to meet my family. Every single time I would fly home, he had an excuse as to why he couldn't come with, and he's not ready, and you know how his anxiety works, and you know he doesn't need them looking at him weird. And then he would also try to like isolate me from my family a lot. And so it was like wild when I look at it because I would tell him about these like crazy situations, like at work or whatever, and like he never cared. Like, and it's funny because when I was doing grief and loss therapy, um, one of the therapists, like they mentioned this Dr. Ramani who talks about like narcissists and all these things. And I guess they were trying to tell me that like certain people in my family were narcissists, but that also my partner was a narcissist. And so I read this book and I completely identified with like if one of your parents is a narcissist, this is a childhood that you would have had. And there was so many things. And so I was just like, oh my God, this is insane. And I remember like talking to him about it, and he's like, oh, I don't care. But also something I thought was weird is like every time we went to England, because he's from England, he's from Newcastle upon Tyne, but he was raised in London and stuff. Like he never allowed me to see his family. And I realized after that it's because they were racist and that he was most likely a racist. Because he would make these jokes that are not jokes, but then he would pretend to be very woke and like very aware of his white privilege and all of these things. And I realized that the reason that all of his exes were like Latina and black is because he really hated us and he wanted to wreak havoc. And so anyways, the verbal and the emotional abuse got so bad that he would try to control my money. Like he would try to control, number one, when he got a job and he got a higher paying job, he only contributed half, and he told me how we have to split. And then when I was going to get a raise at my job, he was like, "Oh, I can't wait. That means you can pay more for the bills." And I'm like, "No, I'm paying the exact same. Like, what are we talking about?" And so I was dealing with a lot of like racism in Berlin, like being spit at and constantly getting into actual fist fights, like on the train and everything every day, and the cops not really doing anything. I was constantly doing like apartment viewings to try to get another place like in the West where it's not as racist and all these things, like, where I could live like a life where I could kind of breathe. Because I was extremely traumatized, and like it was so anxious. And at the time, I didn't know I have ADHD, so it kind of triggered it, like it made it worse. And so, anyways, going to all these apartment meetings is not working. And then he decides that he wants us to go to Lisbon. So we go to Lisbon and get a job. Then it's like, doesn't really work. Go to Madrid because of the pandemic so much. Then we go to Cologne. Then we go to Edinburgh. And then we're just like, okay, let's just head back to Berlin, because Berlin is like the safest bet as far as like job security and all those type of things. And so we end up living in a hotel because it's like impossible to get a place, and the hotels weren't getting anyone. So for people who were in dire need, they needed money, they were giving rent, you know what I mean? And so, anyways, so there was that. And we would like cook in the room with the rice cooker, so ghetto, but it worked. Like, we were able to make everything. And so, but it was wild when I look at it. And I created a YouTube channel at the time, and he was so jealous of it. He was so jealous of like all of the positive comments and things. And he just made it that I was just so depressed and I was so miserable. And then I had left in November of 2021 to spend a month to take care of my baby sister while she was pregnant. And I enjoyed that time with her and my other sister. And I was like, oh, I miss home so much. Like, I need to come back to Florida. Like, I miss like the warmth. I miss the sunshine. Like, come with me. And he's like, oh no, like, I have a record. That's why I changed my name. This was my name before. This is actually my first last name. It's not my second last name. And I'm just like, what? So, anyways, so much ended up coming out. And then I ended up finding out that he was he why he was so miserable during the pandemic is because he wasn't able to cheat like normal. He couldn't like fly into all of that stuff. So once it like really opened up, um in November 2021, when I left, was when he left and was like, oh, the house is gonna be lonely without you. Mind you, most of the furniture was like furniture that my friends gave and all of that stuff, but anyways, for the place. And so he made me have to put a lot of money towards it. And when I think about it, I'm like, we literally skipped the dating phase. Like, every time we took all of these trips, like every year for Valentine's Day, because I'm like a huge card lover, he would have this card and he would create these cute little fake tickets. Like, you get to travel wherever for 9 days with me. But he wouldn't actually pay for the flights. Like, and he would choose different places. So we had really nice places that we went to, but there was always something sadistic that he did. Like, he was such a nasty person. He was very, very verbally abusive, very, very controlling about me when I would go out to try to get souvenirs. Like, he would try to control how much I spent, make me feel bad about every little thing. Like, he was just one of the most draining things on the planet. And so eventually it got so bad, and found out that he had cheated on me. And I tried to like open the relationship so that he wouldn't, but still, because I was just tired of it. And in the end, I said, you know what? I don't need to open the relationship. I just need to end it with him. So I lied to him, and I was like, oh, like, it's a lot with us and all this stuff. But what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna visit um my sisters for like 7 weeks, because my sister just had my beautiful niece. It's like the cutest thing on the planet, and now I have to, even though I don't get to see them because of my estranged sister being the person that she is. But besides that, we'll get to that story another time, because we're going to talk about how I jumped from a boiling pot of water into a frying pan, and that was when I moved in with my sister. But yeah, so I escaped him. I decided, okay, I'm going to escape him, and I'm gonna go back home. And so I ended it with him, and then he made this huge drama and all the stuff for me to get my stuff back. But that I eventually had the strength to leave him once I came here. And my sister's like, "Oh, you can live with me. I'm gonna be getting a house, and you can just rent from me. That way you can see your nieces and blah blah blah." And so I was like, "Oh, thank God, I'll be safe. Like I'll be away from all the drama." And so that is my crazy story about my ex. Um, it's funny because I had to try to condense all of those years, but essentially, like, he cheated on me every year that the pandemic was. And so, like, the 2020, like, the very beginning of it, he did. And then he wasn't able to until, like, 2021, um, before the second lockdown. And so, but by then I had enough. Like, I had fallen out of love with him because, like, I loved him so much that I was willing to do everything. And when I realized he didn't want to marry me, he didn't want to give me kids, like, he didn't want to meet my family, I didn't meet his family. He very rarely met my friends. I only met friends that he knew like a couple years before me. It was never anyone like that knew his ex. I realized like there were way too many like people would say red flags, but my sister Leticia would say like blaring stop signs. Like there were stop signs with this motherfucker. But yeah, in the end, he kept harassing me, telling me I'm the greatest thing, and still at the same time trying to slut shame me and call me a whore, which was weird. And then I wrote him this very detailed message, like this email to tell him like I never want to talk to you again. Like I want to make it abundantly clear that you were like the worst thing to ever happen to me, and I'm so happy to be away from you and your vortex of negative energy. But yeah, so that's my crazy story with my ex. Like it's mind blowing when I think about it, about how he was able to control what I was allowed to wear in my living room and the places that I got like for like, oh, this is you can only wear this in the living room, and then you need to change into this if you're going into the kitchen, and then you can't wear this in the bed, and like all of these like weird things, and I had to take showers at very weird points, and like it was weird. It was very strange. Looking back on it, I'm like, I can't believe that I allowed somebody to mess with my head in such a capacity. But this is like what happens when you are operating from a place of scarcity and not love. Like it was a very, very abusive relationship, and I wouldn't wish it on my enemy. But I'm really grateful for that relationship because number one, I realized at the time that I had met him, I wasn't a person who really had a lot of empathy for victims of domestic violence or any type of abuse in relationships, whether it was like emotional. I was always like, are they weak or are they dumb? Like that was always how I looked at it because I was like, how can you be strong within yourself and allow somebody to do this to you? But when I look back at it, my mom was also in an abusive relationship with my father, and she was one of the strongest people I knew, and she tolerated a lot. And so I think it's from watching that in my childhood, before obviously she kicked him out, that I realized that that's probably why it was normal for me to feel like I had to put the happiness of my partner. But also, like I said, it gave me empathy because I went through it. I learned that it can happen to anybody. It doesn't mean that you're weak. You can be super strong within yourself and still like operate from a place of scarcity. Um, and being naive. You know, I was incredibly, incredibly naive. And it's something that I've had to really genuinely work on a lot this year because I even noticed it when I came back and stuff, because of how tumultuous the relationship was with my sister, which is the next tea that I'm gonna be like diving into, and that is gonna definitely take a lot. Um, but I realized like when I escaped him, I was like, oh thank God I'm safe. I'm with family. And then you find out that family's really not that safe. And the funny thing is the sister that I moved in with, so number one, from my family and stuff, he was always trying to like isolate me. But there were two people in my family that he specifically didn't like, and that was my father and that was my sister who I ended up moving in with, who now has the two beautiful baby girls. And I remember him like talking all this crap about them, and I'm like, how dare he? And I remember when I told him that I was leaving him and I was going back, and he was like, "Oh, I don't think it's the right decision. I just don't want that 2 years from now, like, you realize that they're the same people that they were when they left and that they're going to just take advantage of you and not really care and blah, blah, blah." And I was like, oh my God, here he goes, just trying to turn me against my family. But lo and behold, he knew because when he looked at them, he saw a mirror of himself. So it's interesting because I realized that the dynamic that I had with him, I ended up having with my sister. Um, and it was weird. But it's because like I grew up with her. So yeah. But anyways, this is not about her, but this is like the next segment basically of the tea time. So yeah, so that's the crazy crazy fucking situation that I went through. Like, it's so weird because, like, as I talk about it, it's like it almost feels like an out of body experience because I can't imagine myself like tolerating anything like that now. Like, I can't even believe that this was me. But I do remember, like, what a dark place I was in and why it was so easy for him to take care of, like, to take advantage of me, like, considering, like, how vulnerable I was. And so, yeah, that is pretty much my story. I know it's a lot. I know it's deep. I know it's heavy. But yeah, that's like the best thing I can say is like finding out that your partner is really your biggest hater is wild. Like finding out, and when I think about it, sometimes I'm like, does that really count? Were we actually really together? Because he never paid for anything for me. He never like, you know what I mean? Like he never courted me. We never really actually dated. Every time that we did go out to eat, it was like a hassle. And even for my birthday gift, like I wanted a massage and he paid for a couple's massage. So it was like it's like he always had to get something out of anything for me. Like there's no such thing as something that's for me. Um and so it's interesting when I look back at it because I'm just like, there were so many very like clear signs that he was lying and like all of that stuff, but it didn't come out until later because like what's in the darkness always comes to light. But yeah, so I think I went on enough ADHD tangents to last a lifetime, but that is essentially it. So yeah, if you liked it, please make sure that you like it and please leave a comment about what you think is the craziest part. And I'll see you guys in the next segment when I talk about finding out that my sister was really my aunt. Bye.